When you finally sit alone with yourself, without the white noise of news feeds humming in your hand, without the cautious laughter you share with nearby strangers in hallways, without the trembling need to explain who you are to anyone, you begin to notice something peculiar moving under your thoughts. At first it is faint, like a moth circling a porch light on a far country night. Then, as the minutes drag on and the pulse in your ears calms from its usual gallop, the movement grows clearer. It is not a memory exactly, nor one single emotion. It is more like a remix of every half-admitted desire and every carefully managed fear you have ever had, straining against the taut canvas of your personality. You wonder whether you have always carried this restless symphony, or if it began only recently, when the optimism you once wore like a well-pressed suit started to feel 2 sizes too small. Either way, it is here now, asking to be named. Carl Jung believed the psyche speaks first in images, in dream fragments and recurring fantasies that refuse to loosen their claws from the waking mind. One night you dream of driving an unfamiliar highway, and you keep missing the exit, though it looms large and flashing on every sign. Another night you are back in your childhood home, only the walls breathe in and out like the chest of a giant animal, and the stairs collapse under your weight. These dreams come unbidden, but not unannounced. They are telegrams from the unconscious, stamped urgent, delivered in symbols, because plain language is still the province of your daylight self, the self that keeps schedules and exchanges pleasantries and files taxes on time. The unconscious does not respect such shallow hierarchies. It cares only for truth, and truth is seldom polite. You wake from these dreams disoriented, telling yourself they were random firings of a tired brain, but later, standing in the shower, you catch yourself replaying them and feel a tremor of recognition that has no words. Somewhere inside you understand that the highway is not asphalt, but the arc of your life, that the missed exit is the decision you postpone each morning. You agree to tasks that hollow you out by nightfall. You know that the breathing house is your own body, that the collapsing stairs are the cost of structure without soul. Yet you shove this intuition aside because to honor it would mean revisiting the story you have been telling about why you live as you do, and the spine of that story is brittle with contradictions. Better, you whisper, to let the dream dissolve. Still, it does not dissolve. It returns, perhaps not in sleep, but as an ache behind the ribcage, when you hear your manager praise a colleague's risk-taking, or as the sudden envy that stabs when an old friend posts about relocating across an ocean to chase work you secretly covet. The ache, the envy, both are flare guns fired by what John called the shadow, the repository of unowned aspects of the self. The shadow carries the hunger you once disavowed to appear modest, the anger you smothered to be agreeable, the ambition you labeled arrogant, because someone important scolded when you shine too brightly. What is repressed is never retired. It bides its time. And time, being circular to the unconscious, keeps delivering chances for reunion. The trouble is that reunion feels, at first, like a crisis. The day you finally allow the ache to finish its sentence, it says you do not love the life you wake into. The moment you listen to envy without judgment, it admits you were meant to risk more than comfort permits. Such revelations rarely align with the calendar you keep, the mortgage you pay, the relationships you depend on for stability. That is why so many ignore them until the ignoring itself becomes untenable, until the body breaks down, until the relationship frays, until the work dries up. Crisis is only conversation, postponed long enough to become catastrophe. Suppose you decide not to postpone. Suppose you sit again in silence, and this time invite the shadow to speak plainly. At first it may hiss, because you have starved it of attention for years. Accept the hiss as a wounded animal's test of your sincerity. Breathe. Place a hand over the sternum to steady yourself, then ask without flinching, "What do you want me to know?" Wait. Minutes may pass. The mind will try to sprint away. Bring it back. Eventually the answer surfaces, often in a sentence so stark you feel the air leave the room. Perhaps it says, "I am furious you traded creativity for convenience." Perhaps it says, "I am terrified we will die before we taste real intimacy." Perhaps it says only, "I am lonely." Whatever it utters, do not debate. Record it, thank it, promise you will return. Jung warned that what we do not make conscious appears in our lives as fate. The co-worker who triggers irrational hostility, the partner who echoes a parent's coldness, the repeated budget crisis or health scare, each may be fate in disguise, dragging the lesson you refused to learn into the next available theater for rehearsal. The stage changes, the script repeats. When you hear yourself mutter, "Why does this always happen to me?" consider it a shadow hand drawing back the curtain for Act 3 of the same unresolved play. Resolution does not mean a tidy ending. It means movement, energy unclogged. Imagine the psyche as a river blocked by debris. Certain emotions flood upstream while downstream creativity dries into cracked earth. Therapy, meditation, deep conversation art. These are tools for pulling logs from the current. But none work if the arm wielding them is unwilling to get wet. Intellectual analysis can name the log. Only naked willingness can lift it. You may fear that acknowledging the shadow will turn you cruel, selfish, or reckless. In reality, what remains unconscious wields the greatest sway over behavior. A person who denies anger often leaks sarcasm, passive aggression, or chronic fatigue. A person who disowns sexuality may oscillate between numbness and compulsion. Bringing these energies into daylight does not unleash chaos. It gives you agency to direct them. Anger becomes boundary, sexuality becomes intimacy, envy becomes roadmap. Agency, however, costs comfort. It demands decisions that unravel familiar misery in exchange for unfamiliar possibilities. You might leave a job that props your ego but starves your spirit. You might confront a parent whose love was conditional. You might end a relationship that mirrors your unhealed wounds. Each decision will look to outsiders like volatility. They will advise caution, and sometimes caution will be wise. The task is to discern whether the voice urging delay is prudence or fear wearing prudence's mask. Only you can know, and the knowing is refined in solitude. Solitude is not isolation. It is communion with the parts of yourself muffled by social noise. Turn off the podcast, the playlist, the group chat. Walk until your heartbeat outruns thought. Sit by a window at dusk and watch how the sky surrenders color without demanding applause. Let boredom steep. Boredom is the gateway emotion. Beyond it lies whatever truth you have avoided by sprinting from stimulus to stimulus. When the truth arrives, it may first appear as grief. Grief for wasted time, for potential squandered, for innocence lost. Allow it. Grief is proof that you care. It hydrates the soil where new allegiance to self can take root. What does allegiance to self look like in practice? It looks like micro risks taken daily. You sign your name under an opinion before gauging consensus. You spend the first hour of daylight writing the book no contract yet promises to publish. You stop smoothing your edges in conversation with people who prefer you muted. You forgive yourself the awkward learning curve of change. You expect resistance from within and without, and meet it with breath instead of backpedal. Progress is not linear. It is fractal, spiraling through setbacks that refine rather than erase your ascent. Keep a record of small victories. The night you declined a social invite to finish a painting, the morning you said no in a meeting without apology, the afternoon you chose a salad and still called it lunch. Note them. The shadow needs evidence that you will not abandon it again. Each victory is a deposit in the bank of self-trust. Accumulate enough, and the interest compounds into momentum. As momentum builds, the persona reshapes. People who knew the older version of you may feel unsettled. They may accuse you of changing. Smile and agree. Change is the dividend of honesty. Some relationships will deepen, nourished by your authenticity. Others will fade. Allow the fading, it clears space. Do not chase those who require your diminishment to feel secure. Bless them, release them, walk on. There will be nights when the old pain prowls, trying door handles, looking for weaknesses in the new architecture. Let it in, but do not offer your bed. Sit with it at the kitchen table, pour it tea. Ask what memory triggered its visit. Listen until it finishes speaking, then escort it to the door. Sleep will come easier afterward because you honored the guest without surrendering the house. Continued practice of these conversations transforms identity. You are no longer someone who occasionally faces discomfort. You are someone who courts it as a mentor. Discomfort teaches agility, humility, depth. Under its tutelage, you'll notice subtle shifts. Procrastination replaced by deliberate pauses for reflection. Self-criticism softened into constructive critique. Comparison dissolved into collaboration with your future self. If you fear arrogance, remember that humility rooted in truth does not breed grandiosity. It breeds responsibility, the willingness to own your space without occupying another's. The shadow integrated becomes ally, not tyrant. With its power braided into conscious intention, you can hold paradox, ambition and contentment, grief and gratitude, solitude and community. That is wholeness, and wholeness is resilience. Return to dreams. They will evolve alongside you, no longer replaying missed exits, but charting unexplored landscapes. A bridge over a luminous river, a child handing you a key, a storm that clears the sky without lightning. Record them. Symbols speak in arcs, and their evolution is the psyche's progress report. Celebrate each shift. It means the inner dialogue is alive. And one day, without ceremony, you will notice the weight in your chest is lighter. The mind still races, but now it races toward possibility, not away from pain. You will set your morning alarm and feel a flicker of eagerness rather than dread. You will sit with a friend and speak from core instead of script. You will face uncertainty and feel the ground steady beneath you, because it is the ground of your own integrated being, no longer fractured by avoidance. The journey is unending, yet every spiral upward gives a broader perspective. You may still stumble, but the stumbles occur on higher terrain. You may still meet resistance, but resistance becomes dialogue instead of deadlock. And when the shadow whispers again, as it will, because it is forever part of you, you will answer not with fear, but with a quiet, grounded yes. I'm listening. What do you need me to know? That is the dance of the conscious and unconscious in perpetual motion, the dance that turns living into art. You wake before dawn and lie perfectly still, studying the faint grid of street lamp shadows on the ceiling. Memory stirs in slow spirals. Laughter you forced at a gathering last night, the shrug you offered instead of an honest answer, the tightening in your chest when someone praised a risk you never took. The house is silent, but your heart taps a hurried code. You do not reach for your phone. Instead, you listen as the code resolves into a sentence you have avoided for years. Somewhere along the line you began living as an understudy for your own life, stepping aside whenever the real performance might begin, waiting backstage while someone braver took the spotlight. The day's first light is not yet visible, but you feel it edging into the horizon. You think of Jung's notion that every advance in consciousness begins with a wound. The wound gathers energy the way a black hole gathers matter, bending everything around it until you can no longer pretend its gravity is incidental. You dress quietly and leave the bedroom because you cannot bear the thought of scrolling away another hour of dawn. Outside, the world smells like wet concrete and jasmine. It smells like possibility, which is another word for fear dressed in pastel colors. You start walking. The street is lined with neat lawns and motionless cars, the hushed kingdom of people whose alarms will not ring for another hour. You wonder what their dreams are saying to them in this moment. Dreams, Jung wrote, are private theatres where the psyche stages rehearsals for a fuller life. But most of us stumble from that theatre still half asleep, wiping the symbols from our eyes before they can imprint meaning on the day. Not this morning. This morning you replay the dreams you can recall. A vast library with no visible ceiling, shelves bending inward like giant ribs, and you climbing a ladder that never reaches the top. A yellow door floating on black water, perfectly upright, refusing to open. A mirror that shows you older, eyes calmer, shoulders relaxed, as if carrying a lighter future. The library, you realize, is knowledge unclaimed. The ladder is effort without integration. You ascend, but gather nothing, repeat, but retain little, live on the surface of ideas that could reshape you if only you paused to let them bloom beneath the skin. The door is choice. It floats because it is unanchored by commitment. It remains shut because choice without decision withers into fantasy. The mirror is potential, the version of you that exists beyond the library of unclaimed knowledge and the door of unmade decisions. The dream did not show the distance between that self and the one you inhabit now, but the distance feels immeasurable when measured in habit, in daily drift, in the small surrenders that accumulate like silt in the bloodstream of possibility. You walk faster, conscious of your breath. Each inhale feels sharp, as if the air is laced with needles designed to wake you fully. You do not want to be lulled back into comfortable half-truths. You pass a corner where the pavement is cracked, tiny weeds forcing themselves through asphalt. You admire their audacity and think, that is the entire game. Pressure from below breaking the crust of what is deemed impossible. Somewhere in you a laugh rises, half joy, half disbelief, at how obvious it is in nature and how hidden in culture. Weeds do not attend motivational seminars. They do not question whether they deserve sunlight. They break stone with slow insistence and call it living. Your pace slows as you near the small park at the edge of the neighborhood. Benches glisten with dew. A swing set stands empty, silver chains twisting lazily in the pre-dawn breeze. You sit on one of the swings and close your eyes. Silence hums like a distant engine. Into that hush drifts a childhood memory, so sudden you grip the chain to steady yourself. You are 8, standing in a schoolyard, gripping a drawing of a dragon you spent all weekend perfecting. A boy points at the paper and laughs, calls it stupid. You flush hot, fold the drawing into quarters, stuff it into your pocket. That evening you tell your mother you lost interest in drawing. She believes you. Overnight you feel the first brick of persona click into place. Do not display what you love. Ridicule is lethal. You open your eyes. Tears mix with dew on your face. You do not wipe them. The child is here, the dragon folded still in his pocket, waiting for an adult to say the ridicule was never about him. It was about the boy who laughed, deflecting from his own fear of being seen. You whisper, "I'm sorry I abandoned you." Something loosens in your chest, a knot undone not by grand gesture but by witness. The swing creaks softly, as if the playground itself is exhaling relief. A distant sky fades from navy to slate to pearl. Morning birds break the silence. You stand and continue walking, heading toward the reservoir at the far end of town. As you pass the final row of houses, you imagine the lives inside. A woman waking in a room still heavy with last night's argument. A teenager silencing an alarm set for an ambition he never chose. An elderly man kneading arthritic fingers against the ache of another dawn. Everyone carries a shadow-freight train of untold stories. No wonder the world feels heavy. We are all porters of invisible cargo. Reaching the reservoir path, you smell water, a metallic tang that reminds you of childhood late trips where the future felt endless, afternoons dissolving into orange dusk without the tyranny of schedules. You step onto the trail. Gravel crunches beneath your shoes, a sound that anchors you in the present tense. The water is still, reflecting the bruised sky. You recall John's phrase, "No tree, it is said, can grow to heaven unless its roots reach down to hell." For years you worshipped branches, certifications, milestones, curated photos, while neglecting roots. You understand now why the crone wilted despite constant reaching. Depth ignored starve's height. You stop at a wooden railing overlooking the reservoir. The first sunlight spills gold on water, and in that light you remember the phrase that startled your heart earlier, living as an understudy for your own life. An understudy memorizes lines, learns the blocking, stands ready to perform, yet rarely steps onto the stage. They are praised for preparedness, but seldom for bravery. You wonder how many souls exit this world applauded for readiness they never converted into reality. You will not be one of them. A decision forms, not loud or dramatic, but definite. You will make a daily offering to the part of you that still sketches dragons. It might be 10 minutes of drawing or writing or silent reflection, but it will be non-negotiable. You will also choose one avoided action each day and do it before noon. Call the potential collaborator, send the draft, speak the boundary. You feel resistance rise like a tide. You swallow it, breathe out slowly. Resistance is oxygen for the shadow. Deny it and it will suffocate. Allow it and it will transform. You begin walking back. Traffic noise in the distance swells as the city stirs. You re-enter the neighborhood. Sprinklers hiss across lawns, scenting air with chlorinated grass. Lights bloom in kitchen windows. You glimpse silhouettes pouring coffee, children dragging backpacks. Life is rehearsal and performance at once. Each moment offers a cue. You feel oddly tender toward these strangers, sensing the weight of their unseen walls and the magnificence of their small victories. The man who resisted bitterness long enough to kiss his wife good morning. The new mother who whispered a lullaby instead of frustration at 3 a.m. The teenager who chose to eat breakfast despite yesterday's shame. Civilization is built on such unseen heroics. Inside your own doorway now, you stand still. The house seems larger, as if walls expanded in your absence. You remove your shoes, pad to the desk that has sat cluttered and accusing for months. You clear it, piles of unopened mail, pens that do not write, souvenirs from conferences you attended to postpone real action. The desk is bare. You place a single blank page at its center. You retrieve colored pencils long buried in a closet. You sit. Your hand hesitates like a bird unsure of wind, then moves. A line curves, another line joins it. Scales emerge, a wing, a curling tail. No thought guides this. Only the hand remembers of the mind forgot. Minutes pass. You hear garbage trucks outside, children shouting, the kettle whistling in the kitchen. None break the spell. When the drawing feels complete, you lean back. It is imperfect, vibrant, alive. In its eyes glimmers the 8-year-old boy, astonished you finally kept a promise. You tape the drawing to the wall above the desk. It is an oath and map and reminder. Today, office politics will still swirl, bills will still arrive, insecurities will still whisper. But you have laid one stone across the chasm. Tomorrow you will lay another, and so will the day after, until stone by stone a path forms that even doubt cannot erode. The path will not always be visible. Fog will roll in, storms may wash out sections. You will stumble, perhaps crawl, but you will not turn back, because turning back is a luxury ignorance used to afford. Awareness cannot. Around noon, you open your laptop and draft an email to a former professor whose work influenced you more than you ever confessed. You thank her, share a recent insight, attach a short piece of writing you hesitated to reveal. Heart pounding, you press send. The shadow murmurs you will be judged. You acknowledge the murmur, let it pass like wind through reeds. You close the laptop, exhale. The air tastes different, charged but breathable. In the afternoon, you walk to a coffee shop and sit by the window. People glide past, a courier balancing 3 boxes, an elderly couple sharing a joke, a teenager twirling a set of keys with ostentatious glee. Life choreographs itself without central command, each participant guided by private scripts. You sip coffee and practice presence, feel the ceramic warmth, hear the spoon clink, notice the sunlight fracturing through steam. Presence does not solve problems, but reveals their true size, often smaller, sometimes larger, always clearer. In clarity, you see the next right thing. Just that. No carnival of outcomes, no committee meeting in the mind, only the next right thing. Evening returns. You experience a pang of anticipation. Will tomorrow's dawn deliver the same conviction? The question is fresh paint on old fear, fear that motivation is a fickle deity. You remind yourself that dawn is a milestone, not a miracle. Conviction is not bestowed, it is cultivated. Ritual will be your gardener. The walk, the drawing, the difficult action before lunch. Add water, sunlight, patience. Growth follows law, not luck. Night settles. You sit on the floor with a notebook and write the word roots at the top. You list memories that ache, names that still trigger heat, dreams that still sparkle. One by one you promise to meet them in silence over the coming weeks. You close the notebook, but keep it near. The mind tries to sprint forward to what this renewal will achieve: income, recognition, belonging. You tether it to the present with breath. Achievement may come, it may not. The goal is not applause but alignment. Alignment echoes, drawing circumstances that resonate. You recall Jung's phrase, "What you are, the world is," and without your transformation, there can be no transformation of the world. You flip off the light. Under blankets, you sense the child with the dragon curl into your ribs at peace. You sense the shadow lean back in its chair, arms uncrossed, willing to trust the new arrangement. You sense vast caverns of self still unlit, waiting. Sleep approaches not as escape, but as voyage. You welcome it. Morning again. No grand trumpet, just the gentle nudge of light across lids. You rise. The street lamp grid on the ceiling is replaced by sunlight latticing through blinds. You feel the code of the heart, slower now, spelling a different message. Begin again. You dress quietly, retrieve pencils, and sit at the desk. You draw, not dragons this time, but the library from your dream. This time you see ladders reaching reachable shelves, books whose spines glow like embers. You open one. Blank pages wait for you to write the story that yesterday could not imagine. The pen warms in your hand, heavy with promise. You begin. You wake on the third morning, and the first thing you sense is a subtle shift in your body, as though some inner dial has clicked one notch toward ease. It isn't joy exactly. It isn't even confidence. It is the absence of the latent dread that used to settle over your shoulders before you were fully conscious. You lie still, testing the air. The dread does not return. Something inside you nods, as if to say, this is what happens when intention is followed by action, even small action. The psyche recognizes evidence. You sit at your desk before dawn's blush quite reaches the windowsill. Yesterday's library drawing hangs above you. The shelves you sketched feel both familiar and foreign. The ladder now ends at a reachable height. You run a fingertip over the pencil lines, grounding yourself in the reality that you, not fate, placed them there. A cup of tea steams quietly at your elbow. Steam curls like script in a language the body understands better than the mind. Here, now breathe. Yesterday's pledge, to meet avoided memories, names, dreams, returns to you like a roadmap unrolled on the table. You open the notebook and choose the first entry beneath the heading Roots. It reads, Audition, age 14. The memory comes back with sensory precision. Fluorescent hallway lighting, the smell of floor polish, the tremor in your hands as you hold sheet music. You remember watching another student stride onto the stage, voice crystalline. You remember the counselor's soft murmur, maybe next year, as they guided you out after you froze. You remember how you crushed the sheet music into the trash that evening, then told yourself for years that you were not artistic. You inhale, then exhale, slower than the body wants. You close your eyes, summon the hallway. You greet the 14-year-old version of you, standing in borrowed confidence, cheeks flushed. You say, "I see you." They glance up startled. No adult voice has spoken with kindness in that hallway's echo. You say, "We missed our cue then," but the song hasn't ended. The teen blinks, surprise melting into relief. The hallway dissolves. You open your eyes. No tears this time, only warmth spreading through the sternum. Healing is not always a flood. Sometimes it is a thread pulled gently from a knot. You turn the page, right. I reclaimed the hallway. Date. Time. Small victories deserve precise records. The unconscious love ceremony. Later you walk to work. The commuter stream flows its usual course. Earbuds, takeaway cups, shoulders hunched against invisible burdens. But you are lighter. The weight you shed is unseen but substantial. In the elevator, a co-worker comments that you seem rested. You smile without deflecting. Thank you. Truth spoken in small doses rewires identity. You do feel rested. You feel, for the first time in years, like energy leaks are being patched. Mid-morning, an email arrives from the professor you wrote to yesterday. She remembers you, applauds your candid note, invites you to a virtual writer's circle she hosts monthly. Your pulse quickens. The shadow whispers skepticism. Imposter. You pause, place a hand on your chest, meet the whisper with a steady voice. We were invited. That is data. We can feel fear and still accept it. You type a reply. Brief, grateful, yes please. Lunch break. You find a quiet bench outside and open a small sketchbook. You draw a single scene, a yellow door in calm water, but now it tilts ajar, a triangle of light spilling onto waves. A heron stands beside it, half reflection. You do not analyze. You let the image anchor itself. Afternoon passes in tasks that used to numb you. They still numb, but you sense distance, as if watching yourself play a smaller role in a larger theater. You finish early, arrange files, leave on time without guilt. The street outside smells of sun-heated asphalt and budding magnolia. On the bus home, you think about Jung's assertion that the shadow contains 90% pure gold. It is a startling percentage. How could so much richness hide in the parts of you despised? Yet evidence accumulates. The dragon drawing, the professor's reply, the lighter morning. Gold indeed. That evening you phone a friend you have not spoken to in months, the one who always encouraged your creative pursuits. They answer on the second ring, astonished but glad. You talk for an hour, laughter ricocheting through the line like beams off mirrored walls. Before hanging up, you propose meeting at an open mic night next week, an idea that would have curled your stomach with panic a week ago. They accept instantly. After the call, nerves flutter, but underneath is an unexpected steadiness. Nerves mean aliveness, not danger. You end the day the way you began it, at the desk, notebook open. Under roots you write, call friend, set date to read aloud. You feel the shadow shift its weight, not gone but repositioned, co-pilot rather than hijacker. You place the pencil down, whisper aloud to the empty room. We are doing it. The room replies with stillness, but the stillness hums approval. Day 4. Alarm chirps. You stretch before your feet hit the floor, a slow feline lengthening that honors sinew and bone. Outside, dawn blushes citrus. You walk again, routine forging soma memory. Each stride prints the message. We move toward life. Mid-stride you think about how culture glamorizes transformation as overnight upheaval, but the psyche adores repetition. Repetition is ritual. Ritual metabolizes inspiration into identity. Jung wrote that symbols act like transformer stations. They convert brute instincts into higher functions. Your morning walk is becoming a symbol, a transformer station, converting inertia into momentum. At the park you sit on dew-darkened steps of an empty amphitheater. You pull the notebook, turn to a fresh page, title, Meeting the Critic. You recall a recent project at work where you dismissed your ideas before speaking about them. You locate the inner voice that delivered the dismissal. You close your eyes, ask it to appear. It manifests as an exacting schoolteacher tapping a ruler. You inhale, greet her. Thank you for protecting me from ridicule. She sniffs, unsure how to respond to gratitude. You ask what she truly wants. To ensure quality, she replies. You nod. You propose a pact. She may evaluate drafts, but only after you create them. No more censoring at conception. She considers, reluctantly agrees. You open your eyes, jot the pact. The page feels lighter than ink. Workday, a meeting invites ideas. The critic stirs but abides by the pact long enough for you to speak one suggestion. It lands, the team nods. Not revolutionary, but the act of voicing proves the pact's power. You feel a ripple of triumph and a twinge of grief for unvoiced ideas past. Grief means you value. You decide to honor the grief by producing more ideas, not by mourning possibilities lost. Evening. You rehearse a poem for open mic. Voice cracks at first. You keep reading. The child with the dragon listens, eyes wide. The critic watches, arms crossed but silent. Shadow parts previously estranged begin to assemble like musicians, tuning before a symphony. A week passes, then a month. Small rituals calcify into bone memory. Morning walks, silent tea, nightly reflection. You miss some days, grumble, start again. The notebook thickens. Dreams evolve. The library shelves now contain blank books awaiting content. The yellow door opens onto gardens. The mirror shows many versions of you conversing, not posturing. At work you negotiate a partial shift to creative duties. It is granted. Pay does not change, but energy does. Colleagues note your emerging confidence. Some cheer, some bristle. You learn to let bristles belong to their owners. The professor's writer's circle becomes a monthly lifeblood. You share drafts, receive critique, survive, improve. Fear becomes a coach instead of a jailer. Open mic night arrives. You stand under hot lights, hands trembling but voice clear. The poem spills, words landing soft then sharp. Audience exhales at the final line. Applause blurs. You bow, step off stage, heart roaring like surf. Later you read texts from friends, even strangers. You save them, not for ego, but as data for the shadow next time it doubts. Months into the new practice, setbacks come. Illness knocks you off routine. An unexpected bill tightens finances. A friend withdraws without explanation. Old anxiety returns like a storm front. The child panics. The critic rants. The shadow snickers. You catch the pattern quicker now. You breathe. You open the notebook. You schedule a smaller ritual. 10 breaths each hour. The storm passes slower than you wish, but faster than before. Self-trust deepens. Seasons change. Leaves crisp fall mulch. Your morning walks adapt. Scarf, then gloves, then breath-clouding air. You track sun angles. Cherish early darkness as invitation to candlelight, to slower evenings. Creativity blooms in winter's hush. You finish a series of essays. You send one to a journal. It is rejected, then accepted elsewhere. Shadow cheers. The gold of perseverance gleams. By the anniversary of the first dawn walk, you reread the lily notebook pages. The handwriting looks alien, tight, hesitant. You fill new pages in looser script, sentences running past margins. You sense the integrated self is wider than the persona ever dared. You schedule a short retreat, 3 days in a cabin, no internet. There you draft 7,000 words of a book you never believed you could start. You cry in gratitude at the final paragraph, not for its perfection, but for its existence. Perfection would have been silence. Existence is permission. On the drive home, radio off, you consider Jung's notion that individuation is asymptotic, always approaching wholeness, never fully complete. You feel peace with the asymptote. Arrival was a myth that once tortured you. Journey as art now compels you. Road curves, wind shakes autumn branches, sky lowers steel grey. You whisper, thank you, to no one and everyone. The words swirl like leaves behind your car. Back in the city, old surroundings feel new. The desk with dragon drawing is now crowded with additional sketches, phoenixes, labyrinths, roots spiraling into gold coins. The wall is a mosaic of symbols narrating transformation. You leave them unframed, edges raw. Imperfection is a roadmap, not a stain. At work, another opportunity arises, leading a creative initiative across departments. Fear surfaces. You greet it like a familiar mentor. The critic clears her throat, but you remind her the draft must exist before she edits. You accept the role. Evening of the acceptance, you light a candle, open the notebook. Under the date you write. Integration is proof that change honors every former self by giving their struggle meaning. You read it aloud. The room holds the sound a moment, then releases it like a blessing. You close the notebook, stand, stretch. Outside, rain begins, steady purging. You open a window, smelling petrichor. Drops drum rooftops, gutters, leaves. Each drop a syllable in a language older than pain. You breathe it in, exhale slowly, and really know, that you are living the audition you once feared, the drawing you crumpled, the library you climbed. There will be other shadows, other descents, but you carry a lantern now. You blow out the candle. Smoke coils into the room like a departing spirit. You whisper thanks to it too. Then, with the quiet certainty of someone who has befriended their own night, you say aloud the only instruction that matters anymore: keep going. You finish the notebook entry and place the pen down, feeling the sweet fatigue that follows honest work. Night is quiet, but your thoughts stir with new shapes and colors. The dragon on your wall seems to shift in the ambient streetlight, its wings flexing, as if eager to fly beyond your apartment walls. You wonder if human imagination is merely the subconscious sending postcards from territories yet unexplored. Perhaps the dragon's wings are your own hidden aptitude, straining against old constraints. You promise yourself that tomorrow you will sketch a horizon behind it, a sky wide enough to suggest limitless ascent. Sleep claims you quickly, but unlike so many nights before, there is no undertow of dread. Instead, you drift as though buoyed by calm currents, and your dreams continue the journey you began while awake. You find yourself in a vast underground hall where every pillar is carved with moving images, scenes from a life that feels like yours and yet not. You see a younger version of yourself introduce a bold idea in a classroom, only to watch it laughed away. The pillar beside it shows you hiding the same idea a year later, burying it under safe cliches. The next pillar depicts an older version of you rediscovering the idea inside a dusty box, pulling it out like a relic. The images shimmer, and beneath them, a single line of text glows. What you abandon becomes the ghost that haunts your future. You touch the words. They burn cold, a paradox sensation, and as you pull back, a corridor appears between the pillars, leading to a staircase. You know, even while dreaming, that the staircase spirals downward into deeper layers of self. You do not descend. Instead, you awaken. Dawn holds its breath outside the window, horizon still brushing blue against black. Your heart thuds with the echo of the corridor, the unfinished invitation. You recognize the dream's message. You are ready to travel deeper, to the memory strato where pivotal rejections hardened into dogma. You rise, make tea, sit at the desk. You open a new page and write a single sentence. Today I descend. Your hand trembles. You keep writing, stream of conscious honesty spilling across paper. You jot every early memory of silenced enthusiasm, teachers praising neatness over creativity, a parent's worried brow each time you colored outside predetermined lines. As you write, you see how those incidents branched into beliefs. Belief that risk is irresponsible, that imagination is frivolous, that comfort equals safety. Half an hour later you stop. The page is dense with words. You scan them, noticing patterns. A phrase recurs, "You'll ruin everything." It appears in different contexts, first spoken by a sibling when you wanted to rearrange shared toys, later whispered by your own mind when you contemplated switching majors, finally muttered by a former boss when you proposed a radical process change. You circle the phrase, commit to exploring its origin. The morning's descent is complete. You feel oddly lighter, as though excavating buried bricks from your backpack. Workday tasks unfold with typical urgency, but you carry a secret calm. At lunch you sit in the courtyard and read pages from Jung's memories, dreams, reflections. One passage arrests you. We cannot tear out a single page of our life, but we can throw the whole book in the fire. You pause, then smile. You're not interested in arson. You'd rather annotate the margins and write a better sequel. You close the book and watch ants navigate crumbs near your shoe. Their relentless focus reminds you that purpose doesn't require grandeur, just direction. Afternoon meeting. Your team debates a stale strategy repeated quarterly without improvement. Normally you would nod along, drafting private objections in your head. Today you speak, voice steady, you propose an experiment. A pilot campaign targeting a neglected demographic, informed by data no one took time to analyze. Silence follows, then questions, then surprising support. The manager approves a small budget. You feel your pulse spike, not with anxiety but exhilaration. The critic inside sets her ruler down, impressed. Evening at the cafe for writer's circle. Screens glow, coffee steams, pages ruffle. You share a new essay about the concept of unclaimed ideas haunting their creators. Feedback is incisive and respectful. Several members relate stories of sidelined passions turning into subtle resentments. You drive home under city lights, pondering how many grievances in the world arise from gifts ignored. At home, you tape a fresh blank page next to the dragon. On it, you write one word, descent. Beneath, you leave space for sketches, symbols of each layer you dare to visit. You suspect the page will fill quickly. Days become weeks, months. The pilot campaign you pitched exceeds projections by 40%. Praise comes, promotions rumored. You feel pride, but monitor it carefully, ensuring it does not mutate into ego inflation. The shadow reminds you that external recognition is dessert, not sustenance. You anchor identity in daily ritual instead. One fog-laden morning, the dream corridor returns. This time you walk it. The staircase spirals downward, walls etched with living hieroglyphs, scenes of humanity repeating archetypal dramas, the orphan seeking belonging, the warrior defending boundaries, the fool leaping into unknown worlds. At the bottom you arrive in a circular chamber. In its center stands a desk identical to your physical one, except upon it lies a single sheet of parchment. You approach, read. What you abandon becomes the blueprint of regret. Beneath this line is a sigil of a dragon curled around a heart. You reach to touch the sigil, but wake up gripping your own chest, tears leaking sideways onto the pillow. Dawn bleeds pink across the blinds. You realize the dream chamber is your inner sanctum, and you marvel that psyche architecture can be so precise. That day, guided by the dream, you decide to confront the memory of the phrase, "You'll ruin everything." You close the door to your study, sit, breathe. You picture yourself at 11, wanting to bake a cake unsupervised. The kitchen lights are harsh. You see flour and sugar spilled, a sibling's exasperation, a parent's hasty scolding. You hear the phrase, sharp as shattering glass. In real time, your adult body flinches. You breathe again, steady. You step into the scene as your present self, kneel beside the child. You say, "Ruin is for endings. We are beginning." Flour rinses off. Mistakes feed skill. The child's shoulders drop. You offer to bake together. You feel warmth spread through you, as if every cell acknowledges the rescue. You open your eyes, exhale, salty with calm tears. Shadow integration is part parenting, part time travel. The following week you volunteer to lead a workshop at work on creative problem solving. You incorporate exercises that honor mistakes as data. Participants at first resist, but laughter soon replaces stiffness. At the end, they form pairs and share one personal project they've shelved for fear of failure. The air thickens with vulnerability. Something shifts. Weeks later, HR notes measurable uptick in initiative metrics. Senior executives credit your workshop. You begin receiving messages from younger colleagues asking for mentorship. You remember the professor who nurtured you. Circle closes, opens again. You accept with one condition: mentees must commit to weekly shadow work prompts. Many agree, curious. You design prompts. Draw your earliest dream. Identify one compliment that embarrasses you and explore why. Write a letter from your envy to your creativity. Sessions are raw, energizing. You witness others reclaim parts of themselves left behind in childhood hallways and kitchen catastrophes. You learn that teaching integration solidifies your own. Months stretch toward a year and a half. The notebook is now volume 4, pages dog-eared, margins forested with doodles. Doors, dragon wings, blooming stairs. Your open mic presence evolves into regular features. You publish 2 essays, then 3, then an anthology of reflections fused with Jungian commentary. Sales modest, letters of gratitude abundant. One arrives from the boy in 8th grade who mocked your dragon drawing. He followed your journey online, admits projecting his insecurities. Thank you for modeling change. Forgiveness floods you, tinged with bittersweet relief. On an autumn evening, you host a small gathering at your apartment. Walls glow with art produced over the past 18 months. Charcoal sketches of shadow archetypes, watercolors of dream corridors. Guests sip tea, discuss transformation like gardeners comparing soil. Mid-conversation, you slip into the study, standing before the original dragon drawing. You notice how faded the pencil lines are compared with later vibrant pieces. You feel tender. You decide to frame it, not to immortalize its perfection, but to honor its imperfection as a catalyst. You catch your reflection in the glass, eyes steady, shoulders relaxed. You step back into the living room. Music drifts, laughter ripples. You feel belonging without performance. A friend toasts, to shadows turned allies. Glasses clink. You close your eyes, savor the sound. Later, alone, you return to the study. The dragon seems to breathe again. You whisper, "Thank you." In that moment, you sense a deeper silence descend, velvet and vast. It is not emptiness, but readiness for what comes next. Individuation has no finish line, only horizons that recede as you approach, inviting perpetual discovery. You feel equal parts awe and peace. You sit at the desk, open a blank page, hold the pen poised. You remember Jung's towering tree. No branch can reach heaven unless roots reach hell. You have dug, reached, intertwined. Tonight you plant another seed. A novel idea swirling at the edge of consciousness. You write its first sentence. It is clumsy, earnest, alive. You smile, root and branch expanding simultaneously. Outside, wind rustles, dry leaves like distant applause. You realize you do not crave applause anymore, yet the rustle warms you. Life approves. You set the pen down, stretch, breathe. The night holds you. You hold it back. A week after you framed the dragon drawing, storm clouds gather across 3 neighboring states and converge on your city like an unspoken summons. Rain arrives in horizontal sheets, lashing windows, rattling nerves. Commuters curse stalled trains. Children pace living room cages, grocery aisles empty of batteries and bottled water. You watch the maelstrom from your desk, chin resting on your hands, listening to the building groan under gusts that sound like ancestral drums. Electricity flickers, steadies, flickers again. The world outside feels stripped of pretense. Without blue sky for camouflage, every face you encounter looks a little more honest, a little more unsure. Storms reveal infrastructure, cracks in roads, weaknesses in levees, but also the strength of hidden beams. The psyche is no different. Tempestuous events expose the scaffolding of self. You used to dread these tests, fearing collapse. Now you recognize them as diagnostics. As lightning splits the dark, you recall an exercise from Jungian analysis. Observe inner weather with the same neutrality you observe outer weather. If fear arises, note its texture, its barometric pressure, its electrical charge. Do not label fear an enemy. Label it a front sweeping through, delivering essential rain to parched ground. During a lull between crashes of thunder, the power cuts completely. Refrigerator hum dies, screens plunge to black. Silence, unamplified, expands until you can hear your pulse. You light 3 candles and sit cross-laid on the floor, letting amber glow lick the walls. Shadows dance, your shadows literal and figurative. You study their flicker, remembering that the unconscious is lit not by neon certainty, but by flame, wavering, warm, casting elongated shapes that shift with each breath. You breathe slower, letting the dance hypnotize you into a deeper presence. Memory surfaces, sitting in a childhood hallway during a hurricane, candles flickering, family huddled in quiet tension. You recall the thrill of contingency, how the ordinary schedule paused and the world lent itself to imagination. You built a castle of couch cushions, declared yourself guardian of trapped stuffed animals. Thunder felt like dragons landing on the roof. In that liminal environment, you learned that disruption could foster creativity. As the adult candlelight burns today, you invite that lesson forward. Disruption can be harnessed. Hours pass. You read by candlelight from a worn copy of the Red Book, Jung's own descent into symbol and myth. The ornate calligraphy and bursting illustrations mirror your storm-lit room, a mind alight with phosphorescent uncertainty. Jung writes of meeting Salome and Elijah, of serpents and deserts and towers, conjuring the raw theatre of his unconscious. His courage steadies you. If he could explore such cataclysmic imagery without losing grip on daily life, you too can navigate inner storms while outer rain pounds glass. In the early and the storm breaks, wind softens, rain things to drizzle, power stutters back. Digital clocks blink 12 o'clock in green apology. You reset them slowly, savoring the ritual of restoring order. When devices resume their low hum, you notice how loud they seem now, compared to candle hush. You promise not to forget the storm's quiet. Over the next few days you work remotely while crews clear fallen branches. Neighborhood sidewalks glisten. You use lunch breaks to pull debris from yards of elderly neighbors. Your body aches pleasantly, a reminder that integration is physical as well as mental. Service grounds transformation. One neighbor, Mr. Kavanagh, invites you in for tea, shows you water-stained photo albums spanning 8 decades. In sepia images, you see a young boxer raising trophies, a war medic tending wounds, a father holding a newborn. Kavanagh's shadow work unfolds in anecdotes, victories that felt hollow, losses that taught humility, decades of ignoring painting until retirement freed him to resume. He leads you to a cluttered back room where seascapes dry on easels. The waves in his paintings churn like the recent storm, glinting with peril and possibility. Walking home, you ponder generational echoes, the boxer who became medic who became painter, the boy who drew dragons, man who mentors writers, storms outside, storms within. You see life as a helix, threads of impulse spiraling upward through choices. Some ascend, some tangle, but all carry potential energy. Shadow integration, you realize, is not about smoothing the helix into a straight line. It is about embracing its curvature, reading its double-stranded code to guide future twists. Back at your desk, you turn to the draft of your novel, now 6 chapters of raw momentum. You reread early pages and wince at inconsistency, but you resist the critic's throttle. Revision will come later. Tonight you add a new scene. The protagonist adrift on a moonlit river, confronting reflections that speak as separate characters, mirrors of fear, ambition, tenderness. As you type, rain residuals tap the window like quiet applause. When the scene closes, you lean back, noticing gooseflesh on your arms, the mark of writing that arrives from someplace deeper than conscious design. You save the file and label it. Weeks unspool into subtle progress. The creative initiative at work thrives, and you negotiate time blocks that carve afternoons for novel drafting. You lead new hires through an exercise in shadow archetypes, disguised as a brainstorming technique. They embrace it, productivity spikes, HR asks for a tutorial. You compress Jungian language into approachable metaphors, inner boardrooms, renegade voices, hidden currencies, and watch how universal the response is once jargon dissolves. One Friday, mid-presentation, a slide fails to load. You improvise, speaking extemporaneously about the vital tension between persona adaptability and shadow authenticity. You see heads nod, eyes light. When the glitch resolves, no one cares. The spontaneous riff held more life than the original slide. Afterward, a colleague remarks you seemed unshakable. You think, not unshakable, integrated, shadow at my side. Autumn deepens, mornings sharpen. You run a finger along cold windows, tracing frost patterns like dendritic expansions of thought. Each crystallized vein reminds you of neuron maps. Perhaps winter is the brain of seasons, clarifying, pruning, conserving. You adjust routines. Long the pre-dawn journaling to compensate for reduced daylight, weighted blanket at night to settle nerves, jangling with early year triumphs and pending changes. You dream of crossing a frozen lake, hearing cracks underfoot yet trusting the ice. You accept a conference invitation to present your fusion of creative leadership and shadow integration. Standing backstage before the talk, you feel old tremors, but they manifest as alertness, not dread. You picture the 8-year-old with the dragon, the 14-year-old in the hallway, the child baking. You line them like candles down your mental aisle, each flame a milestone guiding you to the podium. When you speak, the room feels intimate despite hundreds of seats. You tell stories. The storm blackout, the dream corridor, Mr. Kavanagh's paintings. Attendees lean forward, cue hand pulses with frank questions about burnout, imposter syndrome, ethical ambition. You answer with what you know and admit what you don't. The latter garners nods of relief. After the session, a woman approaches, eyes rimmed in red. She says she recognized her own shadow in your anecdote about envy as a roadmap. She confides she has envied her sister's humanitarian career while ignoring her own yearning to work abroad. You say envy shows where desire has been denied. She smiles through tears. You hug. On the flight home, you reflect. The more personal your stories, the broader their reach. Universal hides inside specific. Winter solstice arrives. You host a small ceremony with friends and mentees. Candles, reflective writing, shared silence at midnight. Everyone writes one fear to burn and one intention to sow. The room glows amber. Ashes fall like grey snow into a metal bowl. Your fear burned. That one-day momentum will stall and old inertia reclaim territory. Your intention planted, to remain curious when motivation wanes, to greet plateaus as mesas, vantage points, not dead ends. New year starts quietly. Novel reaches chapter 12. You print pages, mark margins with questions the critic offers constructively. You reward progress with a day trip to the coast. There, standing on wet sand, you watch waves under pewter clouds and remember Lyora's anger compass. Sea foam hisses, recedes, leaves new patterns. You write a haiku in your notebook. Anger is low tide, showing the skeleton reef. Dare to chart the bones, you laugh at the unplanned poem. A gull wheels overhead, carrying the sound back inland, as though delivering a message to your future self. January ends with a workshop for senior management. In preparation, you reread Jung's Modern Man in search of a soul, mining phrases to weave into modern corporate vernacular. You realize how relevant his insights remain, the peril of mass-produced identities, the hunger for meaningful individuality. You craft exercises that help executives surface hidden assumptions, guiding strategic errors. Some resist at first. Authority often hides insecurity. But when resistance cracks, breakthroughs cascade. One VP schedules monthly listening circles with frontline staff. Another allocates budget to mental health initiatives. Small shifts ripple. Your relationship with solitude matures. You begin spending Sundays device-free, exploring nearby forests. On one hike, you find a fallen oak, trunk hollowed by time. You crawl inside, half thrumming, and sit in the wooden womb. Light filters through knotholes, painting constellations on the inner wall. You sit for half an hour, breathing cedar and soil, listening to wind travel through dead branches, turning them into flutes. You exit renewed, pockets full of decaying bark that crumbles into your palms like dark bread. At home you brew tea, sprinkle oak dust into the pot. The tea tastes earthy, tannic, strangely alive. You call it shadow steep. You drink slowly, and with each sip sense root systems below asphalt, mycelium networks, trading wisdom under suburban lawns. You add a scene to your novel where the protagonist brews tea from wood found in a dream forest, discovering memories encoded in its tannins. Writing flows with ease, as though oak dust fertilized imagination. Spring teases buds from branches. On your birthday, you sit with a notebook and list year's transformations. You feel pride without inflation. You plan next descents. Investigate money fears, explore intimacy edges, learn to rest without guilt. Each item feels both daunting and doable. You realize fear now signals direction. The stronger the flutter, the truer the compass. The publishing house that printed your essays requests a full book proposal on shadow integration for creative professionals. You outline chapters, the inner storm, mapping the corridor, negotiating with the critic, rage as boundary, envy as roadmap, rituals of renewal, the public self after private alchemy. Proposal accepted. Deadline 12 months. You set milestones, knowing the critic will salivate. You prepare safe cages of accountability and play. Midsummer, you travel to speak at a European conference. Jet lag fragments sleep, and in a hotel room overlooking a river, you experience a vivid hypnagogic vision. A dragon made of constellations unfolds across the sky, tail sweeping ocean to mountain, wings beating galaxies. You wake with tears and laughter, scribble the vision, fall back asleep. In the morning, you buy a small star chart from a museum store, draw the dragon constellation, and mail it to your childhood address with no return name. a gift to the past. Months march. Book manuscript passes midway mark. Novel reaches its final chapter. Work initiative expands company-wide. You learn to delegate once unthinkable. The critic becomes a compliance officer, checking for ethical alignment, not stifling risk. Shadow grows quieter, but presence remains. When new fears emerge, the prospect of national tour, the vulnerability of publication, you greet them over tea, ask what gift they hold. The day you write the novel's last sentence, a thunderstorm rolls in. Echo of the storm that begin your journey. Electricity flickers but holds. You sit by the window, pages stacked beside you like bricks of a new house. Rain rattles glass, cleansing the months of effort in one percussive lullaby. You close your eyes, imagine the dragon constellation soaring through storm clouds, ignition and condensation dancing. Later at your desk, you append a new drawing to the wall. A dragon curled around a quill, ink dripping onto stars. You title it Keep Going Forever. Underneath, room still on the wall for future drawings, proof that self-work is unending, art unceasing, life spiraling onward. You sleep dreamless, restful. Dawn arrives. You wake whole. The summer heat lifts in September, and with it rises a clarity you hadn't anticipated. You begin each morning by opening every window, letting brisk air sweep through the apartment and carry off stale hours, left by relentless deadlines. Book chapters assemble themselves at dawn, paragraphs sliding into alignment with the satisfying click of well-cut stones settling in a wall. You work until the city stirs, then lace up shoes and wander side streets where fallen leaves curl like tiny copper scrolls. You find yourself smiling at strangers. Some smile back, some don't, but the internal posture remains unbent. Approval has become an echo instead of a command. One crisp afternoon you ride a train out to a quieter town, journal balanced on your knees. The tracks ribbon through wetlands where regrets stalk among reeds, white bodies strobing against green. You jot a note. Every living thing claims its space without apology. Later that thought swells into a chapter opener about biological entitlement, how a single blade of grass pierces concrete because life will not tolerate eternal suppression. You realize the principle applies to human passions. They will surface eventually, either as creative expression or as symptoms. Insomnia, resentment, addiction. Better expression. That's embarking. You walk a footpath along a river that glitters like spilled mercury. An old stone bridge arches ahead. Beneath it, a cluster of schoolchildren shout at echoes bounced off damp tunnel walls. Their laughter ricochets, bright and chaotic. You pause on the bridge and drop a pebble, watch ripples widen. You think of influence, how each action, no matter how small, sends rings across collective water. You consider your mentees at work, their new initiatives growing beyond your input. Consider readers of your essays, strangers emailing stories of daring moves. Consider younger relatives experimenting with art after watching you reclaim yours. You feel humbled, not inflated. Influence is stewardship, not ownership. As dusk bruises the sky, you enter a cafe perched on the riverbank. The interior smells of nutmeg and old novels. You claim a corner table, order spiced tea, open the laptop. The novel's final scene waits. You reread the last paragraph written weeks ago. Protagonist stepping from forest onto open plain, seeing mountains burn gold in sunrise. The ending demands a moment that binds spiral to center. You close your eyes, invite shadow to contribute. A memory surfaces, your first time standing on a stage after open mic success, floodlights revealing dust motes like private constellations. That sensation, dust catching light, becomes the image you need. Fingers begin to type. The plains filled with drifting pollen, each mote igniting in newborn sun. The path forward not paved, yet visible in golden swirl. The character breathes, steps, trusts. You reread, exhale. It feels right. You save, back up thrice, close the device. Sit watching darkness spill over the river until lights on houses spark. On the train home, illuminated windows flick past like frames in a film. In each you glimpse silhouettes cooking, laughing, arguing, dreaming. The world is a library of private stories. Yours is one shelf among many, but lately the shelf feels sturdier, weight evenly distributed across reclaimed chapters. October arrives with conference invitations, manuscript copy edits, and travel schedules. You calibrate energy carefully. Morning rituals anchor. Naps become sacred. Weekly solitude hours guarded. When obligations pile high, you visualize the hollow oak trunk and step inside mentally, breathing until the pulse steadies. The oak becomes a portable sanctuary. In airport lounges, you close your eyes, inhale phantom cedar, exhale jet fuel nerves. No one notices. The sanctuary is silent, effective. Mid-October, your book, Proposal's final approval lands. The publisher sets a launch for next fall. Marketing emails swirl, cover designers submit drafts. The first design features a silhouetted figure under a gaping eclipse, dramatic but raw energy. You request revisions. Incorporate a small lantern held by the figure to emphasize guidance, not doom. Designers oblige. Lantern glows are satisfying. Copied it notes arrive. Tighten metaphors, clarify statistics, trim redundancy. You tackle pages steadily, refusing all-night marathons that once defined your perfectionism. You end each session with a dragon doodle in the margin, a wink to younger self, reminder that play outranks polish. Editor surprisingly loves the doodles, suggesting using tiny ones as chapter flourishes. You laugh, agree. At work, you transition fully into creative leadership. Some colleagues balk. You mentor them gently, modeling transparent boundaries. You institute monthly shadow work salons, optional, off the clock, candlelit. Attendance grows. One senior manager confesses he joined Spy but stayed because he uncovered the cause of chronic migraines, suppressed grief over his father. Tears flow, the room embraces him. Shadows shrink when exposed to collective compassion. Winter creeps early. First snow drifts past your window while you record audiobook portions of essays. Narration booth is small, padded. Your voice loops back through headphones, rich and strange. Reading aloud feels intimate, a conversation with unseen listeners, driving night roads or washing dishes. You imagine a solitary commuter hearing your passage about envy as a roadmap and deciding to apply for the graduate program they've stalked online for years. You smile mid-sentence, warmth rising in your chest. During a break, the sound engineer chats about his teenage daughter's anxiety. You mention mindful drawing. He nods thoughtfully. Next session, your voice pours steadier, as if carried by connectedness. December. Final novel edits completed. You print a full manuscript, stack thick pages, tie with twine. It feels medieval, sacred. You mail copies to 2 trusted beta readers. The act of release, the stepping back, feels exquisite and terrifying. You celebrate by hiking into snowy hills, each crunch under boots an audible testament to progress. At a ridge you meet stillness so vast it seems to erase linear time. Mountains stand ancient, indifferent to personal milestones. Their indifference comforts. Your story matters, yet cosmic scale grants freedom from perfection. On the return hike you rescue an abandoned puppy trembling near a trailhead. You wrap it in your coat, carry it home. Vet visit reveals minor dehydration, no chip. You name him Echo, after dream corridor reverberations. Echo follows you from desk to window, naps at your feet during writing sessions, wakes you for dawn, walks even on frigid mornings. Caring for a vulnerable creature softens residual edges of self-focus. Integration matures into service. January. Advanced reader copies of your book ship. Social media posts trickle in. Photos of lantern cover against mugs. Sticky notes riffle through pages. Praise arrives, but also critique. One reviewer claims your ideas oversimplify Jung. Another demands more scientific citations. You feel defensive surge, then breathe. Thank the critic within for quick analysis. Let it stand down. You engage politely, clarify scope, invite dialogue. Review balance. A major podcast requests an interview. You prepare, jotting talisman phrases on a pocket card. Listen before answering. Speak from a lived example. Keep metaphors simple. On air, the host grills you about profiteering on pop psychology. You maintain calm, share a personal story of the dragon drawing, emphasize daily ritual over buzzword hacks. Listener feedback later lauds authenticity. You file the pocket card with other relics in a box labeled Field Notes, evidence of courage. Book launch week. Virtual event floods with attendees. You read from the chapter on ritualizing discomfort, voice trembling only slightly. Hue hand brims with vulnerable queries. How to begin if you fear journaling. How to integrate shadow while raising small children. You answer each with humility, reminding listeners that your guidance arises from ongoing experiment, not final mastery. Sales exceed projections in the first month, but deeper gratification springs from emails. A nurse who wrote her first poem in 20 years, a retiree picking up oil paints after half a century, a teenager printing your envy roadmap to stick on bedroom mirror. Spring thaw. Publishers of your novel secure a modest deal. You toast with echo and close friends, heart accepting both celebration and uncertainty. Late April, you travel to your childhood town for a reading in the library where you once hid dragons in notebooks. The building smells unchanged. Paper, varnish, distant crayons. Audience includes your former art teacher, hair white now, eyes bright. After reading, she approaches, clutching tears, apologizing for praising neatness over wonder. You hug her, say the apology was unnecessary yet beautiful. She laughs, calls you a miracle. You reply, we're all miracles when we stop erasing ourselves. Someone snaps a photo, you teacher, dragon drawing between you. Back home, you hang that photo beside the original drawing. 2 frames, past and present, gazing at each other across your desk. You sit, fingertips on keys, and sense a shift less like climax, more like horizon tilting wider. Shadow still stirs, critics still whisper, but there is room for them now. You no longer fear sabotage because Jungian, once tasted, teaches the way back whenever disconnection looms. You close the laptop, kneel to scratch echo's ears. Outside, evening sun glows copper through budding branches. A breeze slides through the window, rustling notebook pages. The dragon's wings seem to flutter in response. You laugh softly, heart full, ready for next descent, the infinite dance of becoming. Summer turns slowly toward harvest season, and in the languid stretch of late afternoon sun, you notice something subtle has shifted again. Spaciousness. Not just in your home, where echoes, toys, clutter corners, and manuscripts pile like topographical maps, but in the hours themselves. Where once every minute felt choked by tasks or ruminations, there now appear pockets of unscheduled silence, like clearings inside a dense forest. You do not rush to fill them. Instead, you experiment with sitting on the balcony, letting mind and sky mirror each other's drift. Some days a new idea glides in on those currents. Other days nothing arrives, and nothing is somehow enough. Your first royalty statement for the book lands. Numbers are modest yet meaningful, proof that words you forged in shadow have become tangible currency. You transfer a portion into savings, another into a fund labeled Future Unknown, and the remainder you spend on a weekend retreat for your mentorship circle. 17 souls who have shouldered their own descents beside you. You rent a lakeside cabin ringed by pines. The group gathers at sunset, candles reflecting in dark water. One by one they speak an unspoken fear, then drop a pebble into the lake. Ripples overlap, forming a temporary geometry of courage. That night you dream of the underground library again, only now some shelves are empty, their contents presumably integrated. In place of dusty tums stand seed packets, each labeled with a single word: compassion, discernment, audacity, rest. You wake understanding that knowledge hoarded becomes weight, knowledge planted becomes harvest. At dawn you step outside, pocketing 3 real seeds from your hiking bag: marigold, basil, sunflower, and dig small holes beneath a pine. Soil is acidic, but you trust symbolic roots more than horticultural perfection. Heikyo watches, tail sweeping pine needles. Autumn hues bright, copper maples, ultramarine skies, nights cool enough for blankets yet warm enough for open windows. With book obligations winding down, you return to sketching purely for play. One evening you decide to animate the dragon constellation using simple stop motion. Paper stars taped to glass, photographed while you nudge them millimeter by millimeter. Hours pass unnoticed. You stitch frames together, press play, and laugh as a crude dragon unfurls across the screen, tail chasing its own shimmering body in endless loop. Imperfect magic. You post the animation to your modest channel. Overnight it gathers more views than any prior polished talk. Comments range from whimsical applause to heartfelt confessions of rekindled childhood wonder. You realize people crave authenticity not as polished brand, but as living experiment they can join. You begin sharing process clips, pencil smudges, camera misfires, candid admissions of frustration. Engagement deepens. Shadow work disguised as art tutorial doubling as emotional permission slip. Mid-season you receive an email from a community college inviting you to design an 8-week course on creative shadow integration. You accept, build a syllabus that alternates lecture with experiential exercises, silent walks, mask making, dream incubation, collaborative storytelling, where characters must dialogue with their own antagonists. First class nervously cuts and pastes magazine images onto masks, but by week 4 they're improvising scenes that leave dry-eyed skeptics blinking back tears. On last night, students perform a ritual you adapted from Jung's active imagination. They write letters from their shadow to their future self and read them aloud around a bonfire. Sparks ascend. Laughter follows, unforced, resonant. Driving home, you recall a line from Meister Eckhart: "What we plant in the soil of contemplation, we shall reap in the harvest of action." You feel seeds sprouting everywhere: cabin pebbles, classroom letters, internet dragons. Integration begets integration. Yet progress is not straight incline. November delivers personal tremor. A family member falls ill. Hospital corridors smell of antiseptic and stale coffee. Long hours in plastic chairs test your new habits. Old anxiety creeps, but you meet it with breath. Step into stairwells for 3-minute meditations. Carry a pocket notebook where you sketch ivy poles as trees rooting patience to earth. You sleep little, but the shadow stands beside, not over you. One night, while dozing upright, you dream a brief image. Dragon curled protectively around a hospital bed, heart glowing amber. You wake and feel steadiness return. Loved one stabilizes, gratitude floods in like sunrise over steel roofs. Winter's first snowflakes swirl under street lamps. You celebrate with hot cocoa and a Zoom call to the writer's circle. Someone shares news of landing a publishing agent after 3 years. Cheers erupt. You grin, realizing transformation radiates outward, each ember igniting new hearths. December again, 2 years since the first dawn walk. You commemorate by revisiting the reservoir trail under gentle snowfall. The wooden railing is iced, the water dark slate. You breathe frosty air, Recall the vow you made that first morning. You whisper a renewed vow, simpler. Stay awake. Echo barks at ducks bobbing near shore, tail sending arcs of snow into the air like white fireworks. You laugh, toss a stick, watch him bound through drifts, unburdened by existential reflection. Animals integrate by nature, humans by choice. That evening you finally weave the single closing thread into the novel, an epilogue set years later, protagonist guiding young apprentices through a forest now familiar. You type the last line, lean back, and instead of triumph feel soft quiet. A cycle closes. Another will open. You stand, stretch, place the manuscript beside the dragon drawing. The wall is a timeline of becoming. The following week, your editor confirms print schedule, novel out next spring. You celebrate with solitude, an overnight train to the mountains, rocking carriage, rhythmic clacks, window reflection, merging with dawn valleys. In notebook, you jot insight. Real success is the capacity to nurture multiple beginnings. Destination station is a tiny village blanketed in snow. You hike to a hot spring, disrobe into steam, let heat loosen city knots. Stars still visible at sunrise. You float, weightless, thinking of oak hollows, storm candles, corridor pillars, the mosaic of moments that shaped this buoyancy. Back in town, holiday markets hum with mulled spice scents. Carols drift, lanterns flicker. You buy a small wooden dragon figurine carved by a local artisan, wings curved in protective arc. You slip it into your pocket. Its weight anchors you during the long ride home. End-of-year journals flood social feeds, lists of goals smashed or shelved. You write none publicly. Instead, you craft a private compass, 4 words on yellow paper taped above the desk. Descend, listen, integrate, offer. Under them, you pin a fresh blank page. Space for the next dream symbol, the next unspoken memory, the next voice waiting in the wings of your inner theater. One snowy morning, you brew oak dust tea, light a candle, and open the box of field notes. You add the latest podcast pocket card, the wooden dragon, a hospital visitor sticker, the first royalty check stub. You recognize each artifact as evidence of dialogue maintained. Dialogue with fear, envy, grief, curiosity, wonder. The box is heavy, but it is the weight of story, not burden. Outside, winter birds flit branch to branch, staking tiny territories of song. You sit at the desk and open a new document. Title blank, plot unknown. You watch the cursor blink like a lighthouse on an unseen coast. You trust the boat will build itself plank by plank as you sail. You draw one breath, place fingers on keys, and begin. Spring arrives earlier than the forecasts. Dare to predict, like a long retreating tide, suddenly deciding it has lingered too far from shore. Light skims rooftops at a gentler angle, the kind that persuades even jaded commuters to turn their faces upward for a heartbeat. You feel the season in your bones before you see it. Your joints loosen, your sleep deepens, your appetite sharpens for fruit, for color, for novelty. Proof that the body, too, carries a calendar more ancient than any device you charge overnight. In March, your novel lands in bookstores. The cover, dragon constellation coiling around a brass lantern, glows from stands in shop windows dotted across cities you have never visited. Friends send photos, the book propped beside pastries in Paris, splayed on subway seats in Seoul, resting on a sun-bleached dock in Sydney. Each image feels like a message in a bottle returned by distant tides, evidence that imagination can traverse coordinates long before the body boards a plane. You save the images in a folder labeled Maps of Becoming, a phrase that startles you with its aptness. The route you travel is plotted by work offered to the world and mirrored back in unexpected reflections. A modest tour follows, 7 cities, 12 days. Eiko stays with a trusted neighbor who texts you daily photos. The dog sprawled in sunlight, the dog nose deep in backyard mulch, the dog curled on neighbor's feet while they read your book aloud. The comfort of those photos steadies you when trains stall or flight attendants announce turbulence. In hotel rooms, you line up small travel candles along windowsills, lighting one each night to anchor new ceilings to familiar ritual. Flame toms remind you that home is a portable ceremony. Live events vary wildly. In one city, the audience overflows into aisles, eager eyes shining. In another, rain floods the streets, and only 9 people brave the trek. You speak with equal care to both crowds, and you learn something crucial. Transformation is never a numbers game. During the smallest event, a soft-spoken man in the back row lifts shaking hand during Q&A and recounts how your essay on anger as boundary convinced him to seek therapy after decades of silent resentment. His voice trembles on the word liberation. The room shifts. Even unused chairs seem to lean forward. You realize that if every seat in every hall had remained empty, but this one story had found breath, the journey would still feel incandescently worth it. Mid-tour exhaustion haunts the edges of your energy. Sleek hotels blur, time zones blur, the line between sharing authenticity and performing it blurs. One night in a Chicago high-rise you wake at 3 a.m. adrenaline spiking, convinced you forgot an essential detail, script pages, itinerary wallet. You pat each pocket, flip lights, rummage through suitcase until the panic breathes itself out. You sit on carpet under the window, gaze at spangled city lights, and whisper the 4-word compass. Descend, listen, integrate, offer. Like beads on a rosary, you descend into pulse, listen to ragged breath, integrate fear by admitting I feel small again, offer a silent promise to treat smallness with kindness. Calm returns. You crawl back to bed. The clock reads 3:19, you sleep. The final stop is a coastal town famous for lighthouses and fog. The event space overlooks wharves where fishing boats rock lazily, masts tilting like contemplative monks. After reading, you walk alone along a jetty slick with kelp. Wind salts your cheeks, gulls wheel overhead. You reach the lighthouse at twilight, its beam cycling through grey mist, lens catching brief bright glimpses of unseen waves far offshore. You place both hands on rough stone and close your eyes, imagining the lantern inside the tower, its precise machinery turning reflection into guidance for vessels that may never send thanks. You feel kinship with that mechanism. Your work, too, keeps turning after you close your laptop, after the house goes dark. Back home echo greets you in a cyclone of fur and wines. You drop luggage, drop to knees, bury face in his neck. The house smells of pine cleaner and faint oak tea. You sleep 12 hours, dreamless. Morning finds you on the balcony, coffee steaming. Across the street, a neighbor is trimming rose bushes. Petals drift onto sidewalk like confetti. You watch a while, certain you can hear shears snipping even above traffic, precision and pruning. You remember Jung's line, "In all chaos there is a cosmos, in all disorder a secret order." Rose pruning is both violence and care. You wonder which parts of your schedule require pruning to let more blooms breathe. That afternoon you sit with your editor to discuss next steps. Paperback rollout, potential translation deals, podcast follow-ups. Mid-conversation she pauses, asks if you've considered writing a companion workbook. You smile. The mentees have been urging the same idea. You agree, but stipulate it will include blank pages for drawing, dreaming, drifting, space for the unconscious to speak, not just for to-do lists. Editor nods approvingly. Partnership flows like river meeting sea, each current distinct yet merging. Weeks become a gentle rhythm of workbook drafting, class lectures, evening strolls. Then, without warning, grief knocks. An old family friend passes unexpectedly. Funeral service stirs dormant sorrow. Hymns echo childhood Sundays when you believed faith was a fortress against all endings. On the burial grass your knees buckle briefly. You let tears fall, no shame. Echo presses against your leg, steadying. Someone hands you a folded program. Inside is the friend's favorite quote from Rilke. Let everything happen to you. Beauty and terror. Just keep going. No feeling is final. Words you underlined years earlier now puncture differently. No feeling is final, but each must be fully felt to complete its circuit. That night you write for hours, letting grief scour false layers. In the morning, the prose reads raw, vital. You keep every line. Spring's fever returns in late May. Trees burst neon, birdsong rings. You and Echo explore forest trails, lined with ferns unfurling like green fists opening to sky. At a clearing you discover wild columbine, nodding crimson heads. You kneel, study their structure. 5 spurred petals, yellow stamens. They look like tiny lanterns, dangling from invisible hooks. You pick one fallen bloom, press it in your notebook, beside a new entry. Lanterns grow here too. Summer solstice. The mentorship circle meets again at the cabin. This time participants arrive carrying talismans marked with lessons from their own descents. Worn ballet slippers representing reclaimed movement, a cracked ceramic cup symbolizing mended boundaries, a USB drive containing first demo track. Evening bonfire crackles higher than last year. Someone reads a poem about forgiving silence. Someone else sings, voice wavering but true. You share the columbine bloom, now crisp red, speak about lanterns that sprout in wild places. Conversation turns to legacy. You suggest legacy is not monuments but ripples. Students teaching students, strangers encouraging strangers, a dog-eared book passed in secret to someone hungry for permission. On your birthday, you hike back to the old oak. Bark has darkened, but inside the hollow is dry, inviting. You crawl in, sit cross-legged. You say aloud, what corners remain unexplored? Echo pokes his head through the opening, tail wagging. You laugh. Perhaps companionship is the newest exploration, allowing someone, or some creature, to witness all states, not only curated ones. You scratch his chin, whisper gratitude. A week later, while unpacking tour souvenirs, you find the wooden dragon figurine. You decide to gift it forward. You slip it into a padded envelope with a note. For the child who still draws on your office memos. You mail it anonymously to a colleague known for doodling during meetings. 2 days later, they burst into your office, eyes gleaming, waving the dragon. They confess they've been afraid to share illustrations publicly. You say nothing, just nod toward your wall of drawings. They glance, inhale, understand. Seeds germinate unseen, but sprout in due time. Workbook finished, you send final draft. Designer suggests printing pages on cream stock to mimic journal paper. You approve. Printer proofs arrive. You flip through, struck by void spaces, waiting for other people's shadows to step forward. The book no longer feels solely yours. It feels like an amphitheater where many voices would echo, each unique yet harmonizing in human chorus. One crisp September morning, you discover the marigold seeds planted under the pine have sprouted despite poor soil. Tiny orange faces peer from needles, defiantly bright. Basil shows fragile shoots. Sunflower stalk, though stunted, pushes upward valiant. You kneel, brush soil from petals, realize nothing planted with intent is ever fully lost. Growth may not match expectation, but it insists on some form, some color, if given slightest chance. Late autumn, you receive an invitation to keynote an international symposium on creativity and depth psychology. Airlines, microphones, bright lights, old echoes of fear stir. But their pitch is lower now, more like respectful caution than sabotage. You accept. You prepare not a script but a structure. You want space for improvisation, where present moment truth can breathe. On stage months later, overlooking a sea of uplinked faces, virtual attendees projected on towering screens, you tell the story plain. About a boy folding a dragon drawing, about a younger self freezing at an audition, about storm candles and oak hollows and lakeside pebbles. You end by holding up the very notebook page that reads descend, listen, integrate, offer. Silence follows, thick as velvet. Then applause, rolling like distant thunder. You bow, heart calm. That night, in a hotel room 20 stories above blinking harbor lights, you feel emptiness again, but not hollow. Spacious. The kind of emptiness that hums with readiness. You realize endings are portals in disguise. One portal closes, another waits ajar. You pour tea, stand at the window, watch cargo ships slip toward open sea like slow thoughts heading into collective future. Back home, closing the door behind you, you realize the apartment feels smaller, not because it has shrunk, but because you have grown to fill larger landscapes. Heikyo circles your legs, sensing travel's ended. You scoop him up, breathe into his fur, say we're home. He thumps tail, content. You sleep deeply, and in that sleep you dream once more of the underground library. Shelves are mostly bare now, replaced by polished tables, where people of all ages sit writing their own books. Some laugh, some weep, some simply listen to quills scratching. The air smells of cedar and possibility. The ladder you once climbed now lies on its side, fashioned into a communal bench. You understand. Ascent is no longer solitary. It becomes platform for others. You wake before dawn. Skies pale, almost black, as if the world itself waits for fresh lines to be written across it. You settle at your desk, light a single candle. Notebook open, pen poised, you write a simple sentence. The conversation continues. You close your eyes, inhale slow, exhale slower, feeling the unity of breaths taken throughout this journey. First anxious, then curious, now steady. You tilt the candle, drip wax onto the blank page, press the wooden dragon figurine, retrieved from your colleague who framed it and returned it as a gift, into the wax. Seal made, promise renewed. You whisper into the still house, voice sure, I'm listening. If you liked this video, comment what you related to the most and hit the like and subscribe button.